Hey guys, BMI here today with a quick summary video of the third set of Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, which is Heirs of the Omen, releasing on August 28th. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering kind of my thoughts on how they might impact the meta, and a bit of my speculation on my end. So for those of you that don't know, the Omens of the Ten were a very popular OG storyline and set of characters, where effectively humanity was tested by these omens in order to see if they were worthy of surviving. And so now we're introduced to the Heirs of the Omens, so I don't think they have a direct relationship. Some of them are self-proclaimed successors, and we're being introduced to it in this trailer right now, so obviously there'll be at least one for each class, and probably some classes, like Abyss, will probably have two, right? So effectively, we are also seeing the return of some of the old Omens as well. So we already know that Majerabane is coming back, Lyshenna is coming back, Galmi is coming back, and also everyone's favorite gym rat, Marwyn. So effectively, this is going to be a really cool set for people who are kind of new to the franchise, but also especially for people who played in the OG Shadowverse. Okay, so we'll start with a quick recap as to who the Heirs of the Ten really are. So originally, the Omens of the Ten, they tested humanity through trials, and they were ultimately all defeated. And then when they came back in a future expansion, they kind of learned from their defeats, and they changed kind of their viewpoint and ideology from their original intent. And so obviously some of the followers weren't very happy with this, and so they've decided to take matters in their own hands, forming the Heirs of the Ten, right? So I think additional lore will be dropped as the set comes out, but I think the intention is that these Heirs of the Ten will more closely follow the original kind of effects from the OG Shadowverse. So the first card we're going to have a look at is Sincero, Heir to Usurpation. So basically, originally we had Octress, and so Octress, she had an effect that could kind of like steal followers' effects, but later on, especially in the later iterations of Octress, they started using a mechanic called loot cards. And so loot cards are tokens which are very highly effective for one play point. And so a bunch of your Swordcraft cards would generate this. And so Sincero's effect is basically, you can fuse loot cards to this follower, and then when you play it, it does X amount of damage, AoE to all followers. So if you fuse 4 cards to this, which is the amount of loot cards we currently know about, it will do 4 AoE damage to everything, including leader, and then when you Super Evo, it does another 4 AoE damage. So even if they're at 20 HP, they'll suddenly go down to 12, putting them in range for Super Evo Albert for lethal. So I definitely think this card is pretty strong. So here we're going to be looking at the 4 tokens that have made their way back into the game. So we've got Gilded Blade, so you just select enemy follower on the field or the enemy leader and deal it 1 damage. So it's actually a new concept here that you can hit the enemy leader before it had to hit a follower on the field. So that's a pretty big buff, I'm not going to lie. Next up, we have Gilded Goblet. So this is still very good, restore 2 health to your leader. And I think considering health in general comes at a premium in Worlds Beyond, the fact that you can pay 1 play point for 2 defense is a pretty big deal. Next up, we have Gilded Boots. So this one is again buffed. So not only does it give rush now, but it also gives +1 attack. So again, power creep in terms of Worlds Beyond, but nothing we're not expecting at this stage of the game. And then next up, we've got Gilded Necklace. So this one is again different from the original iteration. So originally it just gave you +1/+1, but now it gives you Ward instead. So it gives you a bit more of a defensive option for when you're playing around lethal. And so when you're going for like the aggressive plays, then you can either go for Gilded Boots or you can go for Gilded Blade. And when you're going defensive, you can use Goblet to heal your leader, or you can give your cards ward and health with the necklace. So it's an interesting change, but ultimately it looks like you're ideally fusing these rather than playing. And so this is the first card that we're seeing that will generate these tokens. So Lair of Usurpation, just a 1 play point card, and you can just tap it to either get Gilded Blade and Necklace to your hand or Gilded Goblet and Boots to your hand. So depending on the state of the game, you can add either of the 2 to your hand. And because it's only 1 play point, I think this is pretty strong, like on rate. Basically, I expect that we'll get cards that are like 2 play point. When you play this, you get to add like a loot card to hand. So they'll probably be like a 2/2 if my assumptions are not incorrect. So already I think this particular deck is shaping up, and again, I think Sword has a lot to look forward to, especially with the potential Octress as the second legendary of the set. Next up, we're seeing the return of Galmi. So this one is a little bit different, and I'm kind of surprised that it's not as strong as the original 2 from the OG Shadowverse. So effectively, with this one, once in each of your turns, when this follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, you deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower. So previous iterations of this actually did damage to face as well, which is kind of interesting. But it does have instead a crest effect. So when you play it, you gain the crest, and once in each of your turns, whenever an allied follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, you add a Fangs of Ardent Destruction to your hand. And so it's worth noting, obviously, that this particular card, you can just evolve it and then swing over something to get the effect. And the actual token is a 0 play point, deal 1 damage to all followers. So basically, once you have this token in hand, you can use it to do damage to your own followers and your opponent's followers at the same time. And disdain, or kind of, Galmuse, this whole thing is basically whenever your followers take damage during your turn, I think in the opponent's turn as well, and it's not destroyed, it'll trigger an effect that's quite beneficial to you, right? I do think there's a bit of anti-synergy here, like basically Enhanced 7 is follow against Storm. And so I think with the current state of Dragoncraft, honestly, 7 play point 5 damage Storm isn't really that good, right? And then also, like, you kind of want this card to hit followers, right, in order to get the crest effect. But I suppose maybe at the point in time you're considering this, maybe it's like turn 8 or turn 9 or whatever, you might just swing face. And I'm assuming, honestly, we're probably going to get Rending back, which is a 1 play point spell that does 1 damage to one of your followers and then 3 damage from an enemy follower. In which case, it'll probably be like a very common kind of combo play, to go something like, Galmu, Rendings, ping something, and then ping AoE board for 1 or something like that, right? So I think, there's a lot of similarities to the original kind of Galmu deck, but I actually think it looks weaker for now. But with cards like this, it's definitely going to be dependent on what the actual deck strategy is going to be, right? Because we haven't seen any of the other dragon cards yet. Okay, so next up we've got Lashana Melody Manifest. So it's very similar to the latest iteration from the OG Shadowverse. So it's a 4 play point 2/4, and on Fanfare you add a Melodious Monody to your hand, and it can't be destroyed by abilities. And on Evolve, you summon a White Storm, New Revelation. So Melodious Monody is a 1 play point spell. So you select an allied card on the field and destroy it, then you deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. So the drawback of this is obviously cut short by the fact that this card can't be destroyed by abilities, so you can just cast it on Lashana and then get the effect to clear board. In addition, White Storm, New Revelation, so there's a 1 countdown amulet, and when it dies, restore 1 health to your leader, and then you summon the Black Storm instead. So then that one deals 1 damage to enemy leader when it dies. And so it's an infinite loop, and you just get value over and over and over and over again. So once you've evolved this, your opponent's on a bit of a clock, and you're going to be a little bit more healthy every single turn. So I think this card is pretty good. I don't think you'll ever really feel bad about evolving this multiple times over the course of the game. But I think this card's quite strong, even though we haven't seen any support yet. So next up, we've got the new Abysscraft Omen. So this one is Shaman Nachar, Hair to Entwining. It does have the trait Encroacher, which I don't think we've seen yet. And I don't know what this trait will actually end up being, but it's certainly not the case that this is on every hair, so the Swordcraft one doesn't have this trait. In any case, this card uses a new mechanic called Faith, and so at the start of the game, you can think of it as a crest that isn't really a crest, right? So it just pops up in your crest area and it starts at 0, and every time you cast something with mode, it goes up by 1. And so effectively, once you've cast cards with mode 10 times, anytime after that when you cast this card, so Shaman Nachar, you effectively increase the amount of modes you can select by 1. I don't know if this stacks more than once, but I don't think you're casting 20 mode cards, if we're being honest, right? But effectively, what this does is, for example, if you have this active and then you play Yuzuki and Gensetsu on turn 9, you'll get the destroy 4 followers, restore 4 HP, and you'll get 4 foxes, right? So it's a very powerful late game effect. But with the current pool, it's quite difficult to reach this at a relatively fast speed. So how good this card will be very dependent on the new support that they have for this particular archetype. And of course, most select cards aren't that rare, right? So this is a card that could very well become better over time as new sets get released. But it's also got a super evolve effect, so you can select an enemy follower on the field, destroy, and add a copy of it to your hand. So this is very interesting. It allows you to play cards which otherwise you wouldn't usually have access to. And so this will be good against decks like Swordcraft, for instance, where you know, the decks usually don't have that much synergy. Obviously, if it's against the Omen deck, maybe you have less synergy, but imagine you're still like a Jeno or like an Amalia or something like that, right? It's going to be strong in Abysscraft, even though it's not for your deck per se. So I really like effects like this. I think it's really cool, and it'll test your matchup knowledge, and also your opponent will want to kind of play around this as well, especially if it's on a turn where you're about to hit kind of the Faith 10, so you're likely to have this card, you're going to play it anyway, and then they shouldn't give you value on the Super Evo as well, right? So I think this is actually a very well-designed card, but it will ultimately depend on the support that it gets. All right, so next up we have the first leader reveal for the new set. So it is Sincero, the heir of the Swordcraft Omen. So this is basically just a hot guy. I don't know why we've got 2 hot guys as gacha leaders already for Sword. And then we've got, you know, the big armor guy already. So I don't know where the female leaders are. I think you just have to buy Erica from the shop. But damn, this guy's like, you know, supposedly extremely rich and got red eyes too. Very hot. So yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't redeem this. I hope I don't get it. But if you like hot guys, then damn. However, the leader I do actually want is Galmu. So I did not manage to pull Phylene in the previous set, which means that I would be very glad to have a dragon leader outside of Mr. Kung Fu. Look, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a bit of Kung Fu here and there, but you know, I like the unhinged Galmu and I like Phylene, so hopefully one day I'll pull one of those. But yeah, very cool. Definitely going to be like a card that a lot of people are going to want. I swear, like this pose doesn't really make sense to me. Like, is she like actually sitting on something, or is she just floating like in midair? I mean, it is what it is. So next up, we'll be having a look at the slide around their balancing philosophy. So apparently, they're going to be looking at buffing cards, so they can buff the play rate of less popular decks, and they want to adjust kind of less viable cards to be more useful and more played. In addition, if there's cards that are overpowered, they will also look at nerfing those as well, right? I think the key thing to look at here is that they're saying that they'll generally make the adjustments at the end of odd-numbered months in between card sets. So what that basically means is that the Omen set will be a 2-month format, right? And so they're looking to make a balance change after the first month based on kind of the play rate and the win rate of the various decks, right? And they might do it at any time. This is like a super broken deck, but noting that they haven't done any balance changes yet, even though, you know, we've had some somewhat stale metas, like for example at the moment where Sword and Runecraft are overwhelmingly popular and doing well in tournaments. Obviously there's other good decks like Forestcraft, but for the most part, I think a lot of people would be happy if they would hit some of these decks so you just see like literally, you know, 50% of your games on ladder, right? So with all things being said, I think, you know, it's good that they're being transparent about the fact that they will look to balance and when they will be looking at balancing. But I also think, like, at the same time, they haven't made any balance changes yet, right? And the first balance change we're even potentially looking at is what, next month, right? In 30 days. So, I mean, whatever. Like, it's cool, but it doesn't really mean anything. Okay, so next up we have Velharia, Heir to Truth. So it's a 2 play point Runecraft legendary follower, the 1/1 stat line, and on Fanfare you draw a card. And on Evolve, you select an enemy follower on the field and you banish it, and on Super Evo, you banish all copies of it from the field instead. So effectively, all the power budget to this card is going to the fact that you draw a card on Fanfare, and you can also banish instead of, you know, drawing a follower, right? So it gets around Last Words, for instance, and can't be destroyed effects. Nevertheless, I think this card is quite weak. So I don't see any Runecraft deck at the moment playing this card over a generic 2/2 follower. I just don't think it does enough. It doesn't really fit anywhere. The Evolve effect is nice, but the Super Evolve effect, I mean, you don't really want to Super Evo a card like this. So in my opinion, this card would definitely require additional support to be good. Like, it would have to be something along the lines of, like, you know, every time you draw a card, you stack towards a certain condition, or maybe when you play certain stats, or alternatively, maybe it's like Evo recovery for specific cards, right? But as it stands, I think this card is pretty bad. And that's a good thing, right? Because it means you don't have to craft it. And God knows how many staple Runecraft legendaries are on the game already. Okay, so next up, we've got Majeribane Great Manifest, which is a 4 play point 3/3 neutral legendary. So on Fanfare, you add Great Testimony to your hand. And on Evolve, you get a crest, right? And this is the main kind of talking point about this card. So when you gain this crest, you replace your entire deck with a Majerobane deck, and this is a 76 card deck with one of each card from the new set. And then you also transform the last card, so the Reaper card at the bottom of your deck, into a victory card. So basically, at the end of your turn, you also discard all cards not named Great Testimony, and you draw 6 cards, right? So effectively, if somehow you're able to survive around 10 to 12 turns after evolving, you will just win by deck out. So that's an interesting idea. And then also, in order to offset the disadvantage, this Great Testimony, you can select an enemy fall on the field and destroy it. So this is a really strong card, like Great Testimony, but then you have to go into the gamble, you have to go into the casino, right? And so I think this card is not the worst, right? Like, it's good for example, right? I could see you playing this in an aggro deck where you play out your entire hand and you're like, I'm out of resources. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to evolve Majerobane, and then like your opponent will be down like 10 HP, and then you'll just refill your hand every single turn. And then hopefully if the general card quality of the set is high enough, then okay, cool, this is going to work out, right? The other deck I could see this working in is potentially like the Haven deck. So they've got a new follower, which kind of scales based on the amount of crests you have. So there is potentially a world where, you know, you just set up the crests and then you play Majerobane, and then you gain access to other crests, right? And then effectively you never run out of cards in hand. All you need to do is clear the board every turn, and then you'll win that way. So I actually don't think this card is that bad. Definitely I'm going to try and make it work just because it's going to be great YouTube content. But yeah, I mean, if I pull 3, you're definitely going to see this card being played by me. And then next up, we've got Jimbro, so Marwyn, Despair Manifest. So for those of you that don't know, so originally he was the Omen of Repose, so basically like a lazy guy sitting on the couch, like, you know, sad. And then after he got defeated, he was like, damn, I gotta go hit the gym, and then he basically becomes ripped. So his new effect, okay, so you add a Torrent of Despair to your hand, so this is a 2 play point card, banish a random enemy follower from the field, and then advance the counts of all of your crests by 1. Okay, so I mean, that's kind of cool. It implies that there's going to be like a lot of crests within this particular Havencraft archetype. When you evolve, you gain the crest Marwyn Despair Manifest is very strong. So at the end of your turn, allied followers didn't attack this turn, deal X damage split between all enemies, where X is the number of crests that you have. So after you've evolved this and set up all your crests, you just want to play like a Unholy Grail over and over and over again. And basically, when that happens, you're basically just doing damage to the enemy leader directly, right? While they're unable to interact with you properly. So this is the birth of a true control deck, which I think is very cool. I don't know the rulings in this, so I know like in some iterations of Marwyn, basically what you could do is you could actually trade your followers in, and when they die, they don't count towards the didn't attack roll. But based on the wording of this, it does look like you know, even if the card dies, you don't get the effect. But I think like day 1, you'll be able to tell how this particular card works. But yeah, great news for people who like playing control, actually. I think this is the return of an actual control deck in Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. And I'm excited for that because I actually really do enjoy control decks in general. And we've been seeing like more and more kind of cards, right? In Haven that have a lot of healing, and even maddening Benedict or whatever it was. So the troll like gold card, where it's like heal 10, but you get a crest that deals 10 damage to you later. If you actually get a huge amount of crests within Havencraft, you can actually get around that downside, and you can actually play that when you're full of crests, and then you won't get the crest that deals 10 damage to yourself. So I think this deck potentially has legs. However, it just depends on how many crests they print for it. Then next up, they're announcing you get 10 free card packs on the release of the set, but you have to go through missions over 3 days, so you get like 3 card packs a day by playing the game. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of this, but it looks like they're going to do this moving forward. And the reason I'm not a fan of it is like, I mean, look, I want to pull all of my packs on day 1 and then like play the deck I want to play, right? And when you like stagger it out, it's like, what, am I supposed to wait like, you know, 3 days to see what I pull so I know what not to craft 3 copies of? Like, you know, it's just something that's like kind of anti-consumer in my opinion. Like, it's just designed to kind of trap you, and I'm not a fan of that. Like, it should just be like you get 10 packs straight away, right? Or maybe like these release missions up before the set comes out or something like that. But they're definitely committed to doing like this. I think we're going to get like this type of mission structure every set from now on. Okay, so next up we have the reveal of the Battle Pass leader for Season 3, which is Keith Rothman. So he's part of Kaori's storyline. My only dislike about him, despite the fact that he looks really cool, is the fact that like I mean, guys, I mean, it's literally been 3 sets in a row where they're all male alt-art leaders within the battle pass. Like, I know Cygames is doing this deliberately, like, not releasing any female characters, but come on, I'm all for the gender diversity, right? Which is not being met here. Like, what are you guys doing? And then the other thing is, like, for Battle Pass Season 2, it's like Silverius, and like, guys, I'm literally never using this guy. Like, I mean, if I want to use like a guy, I'm just gonna use Albert, right? And like, obviously, if I get the Swordcraft leader from the 3rd set, I'm gonna use that instead of Silverius. And frankly, even the default leader, I would rather use that over Silverius. So it's sort of troll. Like, I mean, like, I don't even feel like the person animating is like, yeah, very cool. Like, I'm happy to release this to the world. It's sort of like, they know what they're doing, and I don't think it's what the people want. So hopefully, Battle Pass 4, we actually get a female leader for once. So that's pretty much it for the first day of news in relation to the 3rd set of Worlds Beyond. So I'm definitely really looking forward to it, both on a nostalgia basis, but also the fact that it looks like we'll be able to experiment quite a bit, and the Omens so far, they seem to have quite interesting effects. So let me know what you think about the news, and whether or not you're as excited as I am. And if you liked today's video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.